Hello there! So today I wanted to take you through some of the palettes in my eyeshadow palette collection to do this eyeshadow palette tag that was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines. A lot of you have been asking me to do this tag and it just looked like a lot of fun. Now it originally started with 13 prompts. You pick palettes from your collection that would fit like your most overrated or underrated palette, most colorful, you know, things like that, and kind of talk about it. Well, I watched Jessica Braun's video yesterday and she added 2 additional prompts that I think are really great. So I'm going to be doing 15 prompts in this video, and I will link all of the tag videos that I've seen so far that I know about so that you can check those out if you want to, because I just think this tag is a lot of fun and it tells a little bit about our collection, why we select the things we do or keep the things we do. I just did an eyeshadow palette collection declutter not that long ago, and I'll link that down below too so that you can kind of understand why I kept the things that I kept. So some of my answers to these questions would have been vastly different had I done this prior to that declutter. So let's go ahead and get into what I chose from my eyeshadow palette collection for this eyeshadow palette tag. Okay, before I get into it, if you enjoy everyday beauty made easy, things you can implement into your everyday life, that's what my channel is all about. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, or if you've just been watching my videos but you for some reason just haven't hit subscribe yet. I would love to have you here on a regular basis. All right, so the first prompt is your newest eyeshadow palette. This one is easy. I bought this during the Sephora VIB spring sale that just happened on a whim, spur of the moment. I had never had anything from this brand. Well, not anything from this brand, but a palette from this brand. And I thought it was about time. This is the Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction. This is my first ever Pat McGrath palette. I don't know what took me so long, but I have been absolutely enjoying this so much. It looks kind of basic actually, with the exception of these 4 shadows right here, but the quality is everything it should be from Pat McGrath. There is such a special quality to these shadows. I've had this on in several videos lately, and in every one of those videos I get tons of questions about what's on my lid because the sheen on these shimmery shadows is just so stunning. And of course her matte shades are perfection as well. I do feel like this is such a versatile palette because you can get basic looks. I can get stunning special looks. I can really get just kind of whatever I need from it. Of course, I could see this being a very slippery slope now that I know that the quality is what it's supposed to be, but I am very glad that I got it. The next question is, what is your oldest palette? And I could answer this in 2 ways. I wasn't quite sure which way to go. Now, if this was prior to my declutter, it would be a completely different answer. Now, if we're talking about age of the palette, like the actual oldest, my answer would be Tartelette in Bloom. Now, I just recently talked about this palette pretty in depth in a recent video. I will link that right below the product down below, but this would be the actual oldest that I have currently. It actually does probably need to be replaced because it is pretty darn old, and I would replace it because I do love it so much. I just feel like it's truly a versatile palette. You can get daytime, nighttime looks, smoky looks, subtle looks, cool, warm, you know, it just does everything. Now, the reason why I have a second answer is because of this palette, the Too Faced Natural Eyes palette. So I had the version that came in the tin packaging before they came out with this newly revamped beautiful packaging. And if they had not come out with this, I would still have that in my collection, and it would be older than In Bloom, and I had hit pan on like 3 shades in that palette, I think, either 2 or 3 shades. So while this actually is newer than In Bloom, I have had this palette in my life in some form longer than In Bloom. And it's also very versatile. It's neutral. You can get versatile looks. It's a great palette for beginners, for experienced makeup artists, and it's great to travel with. So yeah, it's just a great palette. I love it. It has been in my life a really long time. So I just had a couple of ways that I could answer the question, and I had to do it both just in case. The next prompt is the most expensive palette in your collection, and my answer is the Natasha Denona Star palette. It retails for $169, and you know, I would say it's worth it. I really do love this palette. It looks like I haven't even played with it, but I have. I just, you know, have a lot of palettes, so it's not something I use every single day. But again, like many of the palettes that I have or that I kept in my declutter, I can get versatile looks from it. I can get very special looks. I can get neutral everyday looks. And I do love that it has some pops of color in here. This greenish brownish duochrome shade is a shade that I've been looking for so long and tried to get it in her mini star palette, but the quality is not the same in the mini star palette. Some of her mini palettes are fantastic, but the mini star was just no. This is really, really great quality, and she has different formulas and finishes within her palettes that just make them really special. So yes, this is the most expensive palette that I own. I'm really glad that I have it. I know I still have the little thing in here, but I like to see the names. So that's one thing that I would change about her palettes. That's kind of nitpicky, but I do really, really love this palette. The next prompt is the most affordable eyeshadow palette in your collection. And I feel like everyone is saying these, but I have a tie and it depends on where you shop. So the first one is the bite-sized eyeshadow palettes from e.l.f. I only have one shade because all the shades were sold out everywhere I was shopping before we all had to start staying at home. And when I placed my order from Ulta, this one in Truffles was the only one that came not shattered. But I do really like this one. I feel like a lot of them don't have, you know, a highlight shade and the extras that you need, but you still get great quality and, you know, you can get a nice eyeshadow look. Some of them are a little bit more monochromatic than others. I mean, they're $2.99. You cannot go wrong with this, especially for the quality. So when I was watching everyone's videos, no one was mentioning the Wet n Wild quads until I watched Jessica's video. I wanted to high five her right then and there because I feel like these are being so overshadowed by the e.l.f. quads, and these are still really good. They're just older, so I feel like they're getting forgotten about, but these are $2.99 to $3.99 depending on where you shop. And I feel like as far as a complete eyeshadow look, you do get a little bit more from these than you do from the e.l.f. because most of them have a highlight shade in here. These may not be as aesthetically pleasing as the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes, but they're still really good quality and they're inexpensive. And you can get a complete eyeshadow look, including your highlight shade in these. And you know, they may be $1 more sometimes, but many times you can find them for $2.99 also. So for the everyday palette in my collection, I chose the Marc Jacobs Glambition palette. I've talked about this many times on my channel. Sometimes I feel like a broken record, but it's been a few months. And I have, I think, 4 of the Marc Jacobs palettes. The quality is really, really great with these. I just feel like both the mattes and the shimmers blend out really smoothly and they just look really, really nice on the lids. And to me, Glambition in particular is just a really great all-in-one everyday palette. I mean, you have literally everything you need in here for any type of look. And it's a great travel palette because it is so compact. I also like how this mirror is elongated so you can see your eyes when you're working if you do choose to travel with it. So you have your highlight, you have your transition, you have a nice gold shimmery shade for the lid, you have a champagne shimmery shade, you've got a shade to deepen your crease or your outer corner. You also have a brown shade here for your outer third, your outer V, your crease, or to line with. It lines really, really well. And you have a black. I mean, you just have literally everything you need in a palette if you want a neutral palette that has a little bit of, you know, shimmer as well, and it gives you some variety with that shimmer because of the gold and the champagne. I had several everyday palettes to choose from, and in the end, this is the one that I chose. Now, I'm not saying the others aren't in other categories, but this is what I chose for this one. The next prompt is the most colorful palette in your collection. Now, if you follow me or if you saw my eyeshadow palette collection Declutter, you know I am not really huge with the colorful palettes. With my lifestyle and the things that I do on a daily basis, having super bright, colorful palettes, it just doesn't fit into my lifestyle. It's just not something that I do on a daily basis. But I do like to have some that have pops of color. So when I was going through my eyeshadow palettes, I did have a few that were quite colorful, but kind of in a more muted way. And in the end, this is the one that actually ended up being the most colorful while still being wearable and colorful at the same time. And that is what I go for with colorful palettes. And that is the Urban Decay Born to Run. And I just really enjoy this palette overall for the simple fact that there are various pops of color as well as neutral shades. I feel like this is such a great multitasking palette. It's also a great travel palette if you want to bring a palette with you where you need a variety of looks. I personally love having a coral matte shade that gives me a different type of transition. It's even got that in there. It's got just enough variety, yet just enough subtlety to where I can still wear it and feel like myself, like it fits me. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love this palette and why I kept it. And I just think it's a great all-around palette. Now you may think that the e.l.f. Bite Size palette would be my smallest eyeshadow palette, but it's not. When I held these two up together, this one edged it out just a bit. And I don't know if it was just the shape or what, but the Smashbox Photo Edit Eyeshadow Trio, I just feel like when I look at the two next to each other, I mean, it could be a toss-up, but I'm gonna give it to the Smashbox because I just feel like I need to. There are several varieties of these, and I think they're just so cute because they look, you know, like the lens of a camera. And I feel like they're kind of underrated because they are so compact and you get great quality. It's Smashbox. This one is called Nudie Pick Medium. It's just a great neutral palette to throw in your bag. It is small, it's lightweight, and you get an entire look from it. So yeah, I gave the edge to this one. My biggest eyeshadow palette. Now I used to have the Jaclyn Hill palette around here. I have a 15-year-old girl. I have no idea where that palette is. It could be upstairs. So just know I didn't declutter it. I just don't know where it is. So here in my vanity right now, the largest palette that I have is the BH Cosmetics Original Zodiac palette. I really do need to play with this more because it is so much fun. And this was a contender for my most colorful palette as well. I just, you know, sometimes you just got to break that tie somehow. This is such a fun palette and it's inspired them to create other versions of it as well, which I have not tried, but it's got 25 shades. It's got a highlight in the middle and mattes around the center, and then of course shimmers that are really pretty shimmers as well. And I like the price point of BH Cosmetics. I feel like you get really great quality for the money, and there's even a mirror in the top. So this is the biggest palette that I have. The next prompt is best memory. And I felt like I could have gone in several different ways with this because a lot of my palettes are associated with various memories, but in the end, I chose the one that I travel with the most. Because when I think of this palette, I think of all the times I've traveled with it, and my mind just goes to those vacations, those times I've gone to visit family and things like that. And this is a palette that I almost missed out on because it was limited edition and then they brought it back and now it's permanent. I believe only at Ulta and on the Tarte website, and this is the Tarte Maneater palette. This is such an underrated palette. It could have gone in the underrated category, which is coming up soon, but I chose something else for that. The reason why I like to travel with this is because it's kind of indestructible. It's got that sturdy cardboard packaging. It has a nice size mirror in the top. It's got everything I need to create an eye look, no matter what I'm doing. If I bring a cream shadow, I've got, you know, my transition and my highlight, and I like to line with shadows. These shadows line really well, and I can create a daytime look or a nighttime look, and the shadow quality is really great in this as well. It's just easy. It doesn't take up a lot of room. I don't have to worry about it. It almost feels like it's kind of padded, even though, you know, it's really not, but it's just a no-brainer palette for me. I'm so glad that they brought this back and I could get it, because when I missed out the first time, I immediately regretted it. I just have so many fond memories of, you know, standing up in my hotel bathroom with my family, you know, getting ready and just things like that. It makes me smile when I think about all the times I've used this palette, you know, sitting there with my mom in the other room or talking to me while I'm getting ready in the bathroom while I'm at her house. And it's just my easy no-brainer, go with me travel palette. So this next category is eyeshadow palette that's worth the hype. And I'm pretty sure I'm cheating with this next category, but it's for you. It's for the good. It's for the people. So just hear me out on this one. So I started thinking about palettes that I've really been excited about, which ones are totally worth the hype. And I had 3 that I could have put here. And I finally narrowed it down to one, the Anastasia Sultry palette, because I absolutely adore this palette. I looked forward to it so much when it came out because it was a neutral cool palette. It had these beautiful, beautiful shimmers for those special looks, but yet you could get a daytime look as well. You could get a nighttime look. Like, it's just so, so pretty. And for me, this was totally worth the hype. Why on earth she made this limited edition, I will never know, because so many people adore this palette. But then it also dawned on me that every palette that I have ever gotten from Anastasia has been super hyped up, and every single one of them has been completely worth the hype. So I have Soft Glam, I love it. I have Norvina, love it. I have Modern Renaissance, love it. And even the ones that I don't have that might not be color stories that particularly speak to me have been worth the hype for the people that really, really love those. And so I feel like I'm always looking forward to palettes that she launches to see what they're all about. And the ones I get have been totally worth it. So while my initial thoughts went to the Sultry, and a couple other palettes from other brands, just the brand overall, I'm sorry. I had to do that. I had to go there. I couldn't not. That's just the way my brain worked with this category. So the next prompt is a palette that's not worth the hype, or overrated, if you will. So I didn't really keep anything that I thought was completely overrated, with the exception of some palettes from one particular brand that I do feel like might be a little bit overrated. Just the eyeshadow palettes. And I know I'm gonna probably get some backlash for this. I don't think I've ever said this out loud on my channel before, but I feel that overall, Tom Ford eyeshadow quads, I just think you can get a lot more for your money from other brands. Now, I really did like the Coco Mirage palette, but it's been discontinued. And the limited edition palettes that I've gotten, I did hold on to the Soleil at Lune and the Soleil Diver quads, the limited edition quads that he came out with. Was it Holiday? I can't remember. They're nice. They really are. Sometimes the shimmers are a little bit sheer, which is fine if you prefer that. I feel like I could spend less money and get the same or better or as good of quality from another brand. Again, this whole thing is opinion, but that's just how I feel. I don't know. I just feel like every time I get something, I feel like the color story is always really, really pretty, but then I'm kind of like, I don't know. It looks pretty, but it's so subtle. So there it is. It's out there. I just feel like Tom Ford quads overall are just a little bit overrated. Next up is favorite palette from a favorite brand. And I am going with Persona Identity, the original Identity palette from Persona Cosmetics. I love the brand overall because she puts such attention to detail in all of her products. The quality is just great with every single thing that I have tried. And she does have several palettes out now. And this is the one that just stands out to me so much. It's supposed to be for brown eyes, but I really, really love it as well. I feel like you can create so many different looks from this palette, and I'm always inspired every time I use it. I also pull from this a lot. Even when I'm using other palettes, I'll go in here for a single shade. It's one of my favorite palettes in my collection, and she just did a great job. The quality of her shadows is just amazing. It ranks up there with some of my most expensive, highest quality shadows, the mattes and the shimmers. They're just absolutely beautiful. The next category is the most used palette in your collection, and that would go to Urban Decay Naked Basics. I don't know if they still have this or just the Naked Basics 2. I have not hit pan on this yet, mostly because of restraint. I'll reach into other palettes instead. You can see on this brown shade, I'm just about to hit pan, but this is a palette that I reach into a lot just for single shades. I'll reach into it for a transition or for a highlight shade or for this black liner or, just what have you. I don't really use it alone a lot because I don't do a lot of just single matte looks, but it's a great little supplementary palette to have in your collection, and that's what I use it for. I just reach for it randomly yet often, and so yeah, it's been used and abused a lot. So these two categories were ones that Jessica Braun made up and put in here, and I just thought they were really great. So the first one is the most underrated palette in your collection. Aside from the palettes that I mentioned throughout the video as being underrated, I am throwing in something a little bit different. And I don't know if this particular palette is actually available right now. If it is, I'll link it. I mean, I'll have all this stuff listed and linked down below. Now, this is the Laura Mercier Parisian Nudes eyeshadow palette. This was on her website the last time I checked. First of all, I think the palette is stunning. This is more about the brand overall, though. Laura Mercier has been around forever, and she just gets overlooked a lot for her eyeshadows. And her eyeshadow quality is really exceptional, and her palettes are so pretty, and the quality is really great. And this is one that I just absolutely loved when I got it, but I never heard anyone talk about it at all, and I just thought it was beautiful. But that's how all of her palettes are, I feel like. So I just feel like Laura Mercier eyeshadow palettes overall are underrated. This palette was underrated. So yeah, if you ever see Laura Mercier launch a new eyeshadow palette, check it out. Her eyeshadows are really, really beautiful. Now, in Jessica's video, she had talked about a limited edition palette, and I'm kind of adding to that Discontinued. And I did talk about the Sultry palette already, so just know Anastasia Sultry. We already talked about that. So I'm just gonna throw out ColourPop Dream Street palette. This was a Kathleen Lights palette that I fell in love with. I absolutely love the shades in this palette, and the quality of ColourPop palettes is so great, but this is gone. I feel like this stayed on their website for a really long time, and it was just time for them to retire it, but I wish this was a permanent fixture for them because I just feel like it's so fun yet wearable for so many people. I'm adding this to my discontinued or limited edition sadness. I cherish this palette. This is such a fun palette to play with. If you haven't seen my most recent video on picking my #1 product from 5 popular brands, I'll leave that here for you so you can go check that out. Leave me your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about my thoughts on these palettes. And if you're a creator, I would love to see you do this tag too and see your thoughts on your eyeshadow collection. This was a lot of fun to do. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and become part of the family. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at my next video. Bye!